Hi, I'm Konrad Marshall, and from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, welcome to Good Weekend Talks, a magazine for your ears featuring in-depth conversations with fascinating people from sport and politics, science and culture, business and beyond. Every week you can download new episodes in which top journalists from across our newsrooms talk to compelling people about the definitive stories of the day. In this episode, we talk to Tim Rogers. Best known as the frontman for rock band UMI, Rogers was born in Kalgoorlie, WA, but lived all over the shop growing up, spending time in Adelaide, Sydney and Canberra, and now rural Victoria. He's lived a big life so far, as a songwriter and raconteur, a talking head and an author, a husband and father and mate to many. He's had his struggles and his joys, but has remained, as always, sartorially splendid. I was lucky enough to go along and see him perform last night at the Forum in Melbourne as part of a UMI tour for the 30-year anniversary of their seminal sophomore album, Hi-Fi Way. And it's my distinct pleasure to have Tim here in the studio for a chat between shows. We'll just have to keep the chatter light to protect his voice so he can blow the roof off the joint again tonight.
I thought you meant with content, to give it light.
It can be both, absolutely.
I'm not too good on small talk, but I am discursive, so it could go anywhere.
We'll find the light and dark.
If we get into libelous territory, let me know, because I'm very broke.
Welcome, Tim. Now, I always tell people when I'm trying to get them to host an episode of Good Weekend Talks to kind of start off with something a little bit quirky, maybe even like try to draw some personal connection to the question. So I'm going to get my bit of self-indulgence out of the way here. I had the briefest interaction with you once 16 years ago, completely one way.
These stories never end well.
This one is beautiful, I promise. My big brother Cameron was getting married to his wife Danny. I had to give a speech for him. And to do so, I started reaching out to a bunch of famous people to just see if I could get a little well-wish, something from people that Cameron admired. So he loved Paul Keating, but the ex-PM wouldn't respond. He very politely declined.
He sends his best, by the way.
Exactly. Horse racing, he was a big fan of the trainer Lee Friedman. So Lee Friedman got back to him and was like, sounds like you've backed a winner, which I thought was great.
Yes, the equine types always draw the less subtle of metaphors.
And then he loved UMI. And so I reached out through your record company, and I didn't expect anything back, but...
As did I, because we've been on so many different record companies. We've been dropped by more record labels than I've had hot dinners, but anyway, proceed, Konrad.
Well, here's what arrived in my inbox only days later. To Cameron and Danny, I love love. I love 12% of the songs it inspires, 4% of the poetry, and 27% of the great crochet works. I love the way it makes beefy blokes quiver and ladies accept invitations to hardcore punk gigs. It really is all that matters, along with pistachio nuts and Chianti and the smile of a child and puppies. I wish I could extend my well-toned arms around you both in hearty congratulations on your marriage, but I am shackled in a well-appointed dungeon near Mount Macedon. My monkey captors and I, in a rare moment of understanding and clemency, are considering early release in both your honours. Congratulations, and onward, young lovers, into the greatest chapter in the book. Love, Tim Rogers.
Well, that sounds like me.
Fucking thank you. Thank you so much. Truly, that's just an insanely kind thing to do for someone that you've never met, have no connection with, random request through a PR. And I guess the question I wanted to ask is, where does that kind of generosity come from? Did your parents instill a certain, politeness or kindness in you as a child? Did something shape the way that you are? Because I'm assuming that's not the only random act of kindness or giving.
I think erring on the side of kindness is a good start, and that's the only real edict I have for living. I guess my parents were kind. They occasionally weren't kind to each other, but they were actually. They were inquisitive people. They admired intelligence and humour above all, and social standing wasn't at all important to them. And because my parents are from suburban Melbourne, when we moved to Kalgoorlie, just before I was born, they were confronted with a new hierarchy, the Western frontier, the Wild West, and within the mining community out there. So all their the social, with their bureaucracies or just hierarchies that they grew up with, were thrown out of the water, and other new kids in town and had to navigate that. And I guess I do have strong memories of them socially, and they were good. They asked questions, and they were funny. They were really funny people. And my mum definitely still is. My dad was a very funny fella until bad health kind of took over, extracted all that from him. So yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because I'll think about that at least today and possibly a bit of tomorrow.
I always wonder about it, because you often hear footy players will say something like, they will stick around, sign every autograph, take every selfie for ages because some player did that for them when they were 8, and they're like, I've got to repay it.
And having a chat with your mates, Shane and Jackie Rewalt, yesterday about that sensation where you can't walk a couple of metres without somebody asking something of you, as sporting folks and folks on television particularly do in this town, in this country. And a couple of young friends of mine who play for North, we talk about it a bit, because the demands on their time and their attention and their patience are so wildly more than anything I've ever had to deal with. And I do keep that in mind, that just as a little discursive aside, last night, because of my recent lifestyle changes, I need to leave venues straight away. I just can't be around people. And so I race out of there. And after the 2.5-hour show last night, some folks found a way of communicating with me through social media, really angry that I didn't have the time to talk to them after the show. And I felt that I should reply to them all, which is not what you should do. Any person in entertainment will tell you, or in the public eye at whatever level. But I said, look, I actually have to do it to stay living. And the 3 minutes I would have given you could have, 30 hours later, I'd be in some room taking drugs. So it's not going to happen. But generally during the day, if it's not a threat, and if it's not a threat to work, it takes very little. And there's levels of it, definitely with sports people, actors, people on television, where there's a real familiarity with you, that strangers will approach you because they feel that they know you. And to a point, they kind of do. But with someone at my level, you just look a little weird. People look at you oddly because I look a little Dickensian. And you just sort of smile, and if people want to chat, that's absolutely fine during the day, but move on. It doesn't take very much.
Yeah, just to protect that space. I wanted to go back just in your life briefly to the teenage years, because when you're reading through a bio of Tim Rogers, two little things stand out as kind of incongruous with the person that I assume you are.
Good use of incongruous, Konrad.
You're the shaggy, flamboyant troubadour, and then I see these bio points, and it's like school captain in high school, and then off to uni, not just uni, but ANU in Canberra, and to study law.
Yep.
Did you ever kind of think that you were really going to stick to that studious, formal path in life?
Oh, I wanted to. Because it just was attractive, and it was performative, because I wanted to be a barrister. And music, which was my one overabiding love, it just didn't seem possible that you could do anything but play every couple of weeks at university bars for parties.
Yep.
Making a career out of it, or a pursuit, just seemed complete fantasy.
Right.
So I went into law school because my mum met a young woman on a bus who said that she studied Japanese studies and law at ANU, and I jumped on that. Preceding all that, though, in year 11 I got kicked out of school for getting drunk at school, smoking pot, and also getting in fights. And so I was thrown out of school at the start of year 11, and for a couple of weeks was looking for jobs around Castle Hill, Borkham Hills in northwestern Sydney where I lived, and I just didn't have any skills at all, and so I begged to get back into school and really studied hard. The school captaincy thing I still think was a bit of a joke, but I'd only been at the school for 2 years previous, so I was used to being a bit of a people pleaser. Little bit of a rascal element, which was maybe more to do with the friends and the company I was keeping. But that was all based around music. All my friends were through music or through musical theatre. So the incongruity of being school captain, study, I actually don't see them as being incongruous, because I think there's a cliche about rock and roll musicians or folk musicians, country musicians, as being lascivious and reprobates and bit thick and wrecking hotel rooms and all that, which is a cliche for a reason. But I think that your duty as a performer is just to be interesting and to be interested, because if you're going to write about living, you need to understand how other people live to make your art better. And if you're not trying to make your art better, well, personally, I think you should get out of the way. It would appear that most performers don't think the same way, because there's a level of people make a living doing it, and a lot of performers think, well, this is our catalogue that we love and people love, and so we'll go out and play this and go and eat nice meals and stay in nice hotels. And even though we're doing a 30th anniversary tour of our second record at the moment, we actually can't do that, and we have to keep creating, because that's the reason pretty much why I'm living. I can be a better parent, a better partner if I'm creating, and we're completely broke. And so why I mention that is that we're extremely grateful to be doing this tour, and where the perception is with the rock and roll musician that you're blasé about everything, but no, most musicians I know worth their salt, the ones who I really respect, are so grateful to be able to be playing, because rock and roll music's kind of marginal as far as popular culture goes these days, you know. I mean, people will own a couple of Foo Fighters records and good on them, wonderful people, but for nerds like us, we feel that it's always potluck that we manage to play the Forum a couple of nights, or play the Tote, or play anywhere. See, I told you I can get discursive.
Absolutely, you can. Well, let's
tell you about my recent trip to Afghanistan.
No. You left school, of course, struggling with ill mental health. And
I left university.
University, yes. I heard you talking about that on an excellent podcast with Richard Kingsmill about, I guess, how you felt like you were likely misdiagnosed as schizophrenic, bouts of hospitalisation, panic attacks, anxiety, kind of later recognition of what would be obsessive compulsive disorder. Really just a lot of stuff that the world probably didn't have a good lexicon for at the time, and sort of does now.
Particularly the diagnosis, because I thought then that's life over for me. I was 20, quit my second university law course, and just got on all the meds for what was diagnosed as schizophrenia, and I was just zombified for a couple of years while the band was starting. And really, looking back at it now, it was an anxiety disorder, which snowballed because I was living alone, studying a degree that was really above me. I was surrounded by a lot of drugs, just because university life at that time, and probably ate 3 times a year. You know, it was just all this perfect storm of very bad mental health. But there was that, and now I'm kind of at peace with it, because I go back to Canberra or go back to the University of New South Wales or Macquarie Uni, and I can walk through and think, well, maybe one day I'll come back to study, and it'll be really enjoyable, and lay all those, you know, those horrible times. Well, I've kind of laid them to rest, but I talk about it only because when I heard about other people's experiences with that kind of sensation and those episodes, I didn't need medication after that. Well, I did, but to know that other people that I liked had similar experiences meant so much to me. I'm not an alien.
You alluded to it in the show last night. Like I took note of it. At least one of the lines that you said to the audience was, when you're having those strange thoughts, please bear in mind that everyone has them. Some people are just better at hiding them.
Yeah, it's we do get the children of folks at shows who write letters to me and want to talk about mental health stuff and at shows. And it always used to be at 4:30 a.m. in an all-nighter somewhere, and I'd noticed someone really wanting to have a chat about it, and I thought 4:30 when you got a nose full and a belly full is probably not the best time to talk about it. But it seems there are a lot of people out there who want, if not advice, because I don't have a lot of advice to give, but I can just talk about my own experience, and that there is, you can get through it. And in my case, I did get through it, although I still have rigmaroles that you won't notice for my ways of getting through.
Do you have methods?
Routines
or habits?
Counting things I avoid, situations I avoid, but not crippling as they used to be. And I just view them as idiosyncrasies at this point and need to explain to people when it is perceived that I'm being rude or nasty, when really I just have to explain, excuse me, this is my way of getting through a day or getting through the next 5 minutes. So with folks who have the bad fortune of worse conditions and worse afflictions, that needs to be treated differently. And so why I talk about it is that there's a very big difference between being blue and being melancholy and depression.
Yep.
And there's a very big difference between being nervous, which we all get nervous and we should. It's a good response, and anxiety. And I think that referring to everything as being an anxious situation or a depressive situation is really dangerous. And to understand what the difference is, I think is important. And I don't know the lexicon of mental affliction or mental illness, but we can kind of, when there's the opportunity to talk about it, I think it can be helpful for someone who's at least perceived, and I do feel as if I've climbed a hill or crawled up a big hill and I'm coming down the other side. And that only happened 3 months ago, going into hospital rehab, because for decades, the only way I dealt with it was to drink myself into complete oblivion. And that was the only way of dealing with it. Wake up in the morning, you're anxious, get straight to the bottle if you didn't have to drive. I hate flying, so anytime I get on a plane, would just get absolutely poleaxed footy on a plane. And of course, what's going to happen next. It means bad shows, it means you're just putting stress on your body and your mind, and so you're completely buggered. And so I admitted myself to hospital 3 months ago on a free program that my GP suggested, because he said, Rogers, you're buggered. And
right.
So it happens if it happens every couple of years where there's a wake-up call, tap on your shoulder, be it from a deity or a medical professional saying you need to change the way you do things, take that advice on and don't try and tough it out.
Good advice. Let's talk about something fun, the footy. You're a North Melbourne tragic.
There's nothing tragic about passion, Konrad, okay? I don't like that term, footy tragic. I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
But it's passion and enthusiasm.
I used to call myself a long-suffering Richmond supporter, but now I'm an insufferable Richmond supporter.
Good.
Yeah.
Because working in the arts, I get people who will, on their first meeting with me, go, I'm not into footy. And I go, I actually don't care. I get it why you're not, because when you're surrounded by it, particularly in this town, I get it. You don't have to be. My best friends, most of them wouldn't even watch a game with me. However, footy is a wonderful conduit to great things. I mean, being at games and you can have your meth dealer on your left and your brain surgeon on your right. You know, the socio fluidity of Australian rules football and is really unique in world
Brain
sport.
surgeons often behave like the meth dealers as well when you get them in a close game. You know.
Isn't it funny?
Mm.
Yes. Your question, Konrad. I beg your pardon.
That's all right. So I think in your book you said that until you were 13, all you wanted to be was a footy player.
Yep.
And then from the time you were 14, all you wanted to be was in a band.
Yeah.
So I guess it was just a long way of asking like how you fell in love with footy and what changed at 14.
Well, my dad was a footballer and then a footy
And an
umpire.
right?
Yep. He became an umpire when I was born because he needed to get some extra scratch. Great player. And I think my love was from him. Kalgoorlie as a kid, it was just all around. Perth, it was all around. Adelaide. I'm a better footballer now than I was as a kid. But Dad, even though he was an Essendon supporter, I didn't find out that he was until I was about 13 because he was very quiet about it. Just wasn't very, I can't think of the word at the moment. It wasn't all about the team. It was about the beauty of the game.
Right.
And the humour of it. Even though he was a very big, kind of tough guy, centre-half forward, centre-half back, he only told the funny stories about it or stories with pathos about it, as did my mum, because she'd tag along and see games and she'd talk about people in the crowd. And same with cricket teams, and that's carried over because I still play cricket now. And always looking for the opportunities for, one, to play well, because I've got a competitive streak and I like to win games, but that's kind of, I acquiesce that desire to perform well with let's all have a wonderful experience together, particularly now. And so when I've got a 17-year-old sledging me at silly mid-on when I'm striding out to bat, it's like someone just took the rug out of it. Really? You're going to sledge grandpa here, and get really personal and nasty. And then after the game, really want to ask about, what were Oasis like or what was Kurt Cobain like? And I'm like, yeah, all right, kid. Let me tell you, just can you apologise for everything you said when I was out there?
So if you could zoom back in time, would you be the footy star or you flat out had your choice? Would you be the footy star or the rock star? Would you be the front man or the full forward?
I think I'm better suited at being a musician, being a creative person. Not to say that you can't be creative as a sports person. I've been really, really knocked out a couple of players I've become friendly with in the past couple of years who are got these wonderfully creative minds, and yet see them on the ground and they just seem like automatons or these competitive beasts, but then one-on-one, beautifully creative. No, I never had the body for playing competitive sport. I'm quite breakable. Although my last game of footy for Wood End Masters, it was last year, and it was an intra-club game, and I was surprised that I actually still had a bit of toe and could find space and take grabs and really loved it. But I just cannot afford to bust a finger at the moment.
Yeah, of course.
And then one of my great mates, captain of the club, busted his knee last week and he's out of work for months. And so rock and roll's ruining my sporting career again.
So you're on tour right now, celebrating the 30th anniversary of Hi-Fi Way, which was released in 1995. Just prior to recording that, you were touring with Soundgarden in America, just before Soundgarden blows up and becomes Soundgarden, sort of as we
They were really big on that tour.
Yeah.
They could have been, we heard every venue. They were playing 20,000, 15,000 seat arenas, but the whole talk was that they could have been doing 50 or 60,000. But they were that kind of band. They didn't want to play bigger venues. They wanted to play, that was the biggest they wanted to get.
Oh.
And it was conflictual for them because they were four of the smartest, funniest, most generous people I've ever met in my life. And yet they had a real struggle with the band getting bigger. And it was always that they'd look out in the crowd and see jocks. And as jockish as someone like Chris looked like, and Matty Cameron and Ben and Kim, they're stocky, big dudes. But they were very, lack of a better term, they were artists, and they just wanted to talk about anything other than bro kind of stuff or jock kind of stuff. And so they had a real problem with looking out and seeing those crowds. And that was a big lesson for us because it taught us really early that no amount of success is going to make you happy. I mean, the whole spectre of those tours was Cobain over everything because we keep running into friends of Kurt's, and we played with Nirvana a couple of times, but it was running into friends of his, be it the Screaming Trees or Mudhoney Dudes or a lady actually who was at our show last night flew out from Seattle to see our show last night, and it was part of that music scene in that time. And even that whole town's music scene, what we got from that, because we were hanging out there quite a bit and made some lifelong friends, was that ethics is kind of on par with how great you are musically. Ethics, humour, and your musical ability, or just your musical shtick.
Yep.
And the rest, as far as climbing up the ladder, there's, as we know, some of the most successful people we know just find it unbearable and have topped themselves or harmed themselves. And what's the lesson there, kids? It's dangerous to think of it as a competitive, as a sport, the creation of art. And it's a real worry. My daughter, who's about to put out her first record in New York City, where she's lived since she was 10, and her worry is how it's perceived. And that's another part to it, climbing up the rungs. I'm sure she'd love to get 300 shows and play with her favourite groups and get her songs on radio, but her main concern is the criticism that comes with her being extraordinarily talented, very intelligent young woman who also happens to have her mother's gorgeous good looks, and that she's got a target on her back, And she's 24, and I just love her to be able to just write her brilliant songs and make them in her stepdad and her mum's studio and just destroy the world. But she's got that extra concern on her, and that's a burden I don't think is really unfortunate.
When you released Hi-Fi Way, it went to number one in the Australian charts. And
for about a second.
And about 18 months later is Hourly Daily, which also goes to number one.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the sort of charts that try to rank the great Australian albums of all time sort of have both of them up there quite high. No one can really settle on which one's better. But what strikes me about it is it's just amazing that you were able to produce these two things within such close proximity to one another. And I just wondered, is that, it surprised me, but is it actually surprising, or when you're in a kind of state of flow and the juices are going, should you expect great things to come in clusters like that? Were you guys just on a run?
I think Rusty joining the band opened up everything for me. My brother, who was the first drummer in UMI, was an incredible musical brain, but we were also still not very close at that time, and so I wasn't introduced to his record collection, unfortunately, because it was the best of all time. Our next drummer, Mark, was a phenomenal musician and is a phenomenal musician, but we just didn't have that kinship. When I met Russ, and he was such a encyclopedia of popular culture that my learning and my ability and my chutzpah and putting in little hooks and changes accelerated enormously, because I just felt this real great freedom, and Andy was developing as a player equally as quickly. We were playing so many shows and meeting so many people and having odd experiences, generally overseas. That was weird because you'd play a toilet one day and then a stadium the next. And it couldn't help but feed into that. And it will feed our creativity. I was exposed to a lot of records, a lot of literature, and just my demands on myself went up. The lyrics were the big ones for me. Musical performances was one thing, but the pursuit of actually writing something of substance around about the time of our third album, that's when it became important to me. On Hi-Fi Way, I just didn't even think about it because I thought no one listens anyway. They just want windmills and Rusty's drum fills and Andy's bass runs and a bit of screaming and angst and I'm your Berlin chair, lean on me till I break. I still don't know what it means, but it doesn't strike me as being very insightful or for the time. I mean, you listen to Joni Mitchell's For the Roses or Hajira and it doesn't quite stack up. But now the demands on myself as a lyricist are Hajira or Don Juan's Reckless Daughter and not just angst and screaming.
You're playing both of these albums, of course, in full on this tour. So you're probably more familiar with them right now than you've ever been. Do you have a favourite musically or personally? Like, can you choose between your children?
I feel like someone else's children on this tour. They're not, I wrote them, but this tour is very much about people still coming to see us. Now, why I say that, I guess the experience of going off and singing with the Hard-Ons for the past 5 years has been such an adventure. And one day it'll be an education, but sort of stepping into their lives and their history and definitely with crowd expectations for them and feeling so much hatred from a very small part of the crowd each night has been really something. And it was enormously upsetting to me at the start because I love the Hard-Ons and I just have loved them for so long. And when they asked me, I thought I get a chance to play with my heroes, and then getting vitriol from people right to my face was, I get it. I absolutely get it, but I didn't want to experience it because I love those dudes. And so coming back to You Am I is a bit like, okay, this is where I grew up. This has given me everything I have in life. But these songs mean more to other people than they do to me. But in this kind of echo chamber, even though I can't see 10 feet in front of me, I get the feeling that people are really enjoying it. And you can actually feel that on stage. And with the benefit of not having a bottle of whiskey down my throat and a couple of Alliums, I can really feel it. Before this year, I've always just felt enthusiasm as some kind of antagonism, which is maybe my immaturity or drunkenness or whatever it was. But now you just feel this rush of, and whether it's sentimentality for those folks, and if it is, then that's wonderful. But I can assure you it's not sentimentality for us, even though we're playing these old songs, because our friendship within You Am I is a lot stronger in 2020, whatever year it is, 5, than 1995. It was very giddy and silly and drunky and druggy and exhilarating back then, but it's a lot deeper now. And there's sometimes it's an obligation to get to an airport or you're not really feeling like getting somewhere, but we really look out for each other. And if any decision was going to really threaten our relationship as friends, we wouldn't do it. And I do love that about us, and I'd like that to be perceptible, because in a time where there's very few people you can sort of trust in a public forum, I've always put my trust in rock and roll bands, for better or worse, because it can lead you down terrible paths. But you just brought into this very passionate and intimate circumstances, and then you cast adrift, and then you're back together again, and then you cast adrift within a group or within your relationship with an audience and with your muse. It's all very intense and then very dull and very intense. And you've really got to keep together. And so you really do lean on each other. It's a wonderful little microcosm, I think. It should be.
I got a gear shift question here, quite literally, actually. I understand you're a cyclist?
I like cycling, just socially. I don't don the gear and I don't have a racing bike.
Oh, damn it. Yeah. I'd read that you wrote the cover story for the inaugural issue of Treadly.
Treadly, yeah, I love Treadly magazine.
Like 10 years ago or so, I was convinced, at 56, that you're a mammal, a middle-aged man in Lycra.
I'm 55.
Riding around through the country roads.
I'm a bit dismissed. I just don't like the shouting.
Yeah.
And I'm a solo rider. I don't ride with anyone else. I ride with my wife sometimes, but where we live, there's so many hills, it's a little treacherous. And also, if you ride at any pace, there's a high possibility you'll be taken out by a 7-foot grey kangaroo. And the irony, being a North Melbourne supporter, would just be it's too great. One day I might, but no, I don't enjoy it. Just when cyclists shout at each other, it's like, please, can you just talk when you're sipping your lattes But I'm not someone who slags people getting up in that gear, because I have a collection of 400 footy Guernseys and baseball jerseys, and I love sporting memorabilia, so I can't really say anything about people in Lycra, but you'll see me in corduroy shorts and inappropriate footwear.
One final one. So the creative life is obviously a privileged one in many ways. You work with music and words and performance. You speak, you opine, but there's chaos and crisis probably in all of that too, because you're always trying to make the most of this sense of freedom, artistic freedom that you've got. I'm just wondering, what do you do outside of all of that sort of centers you or grounds you? Are there things that you do to keep calm, to keep yourself steady? Just
day jobs, really. Landscaping and lawn mowing, dishwashing, occasional bar work. That's pretty grounding. When you're cleaning toilets at 2 a.m, that's pretty grounding. Reading fiction is my big love. It's difficult to maintain a day job when you do what I do. Next week I was going to start a job at home, and I got a TV acting gig, and so which I'm very grateful for. It's a great part, but I'll have to go and do that, and I couldn't take the job. Why did I mention that? I think I'm just vaingloriously sort of name dropping, but you stay pretty grounded just being middlingly unsuccessful. The living where I do, I think, helps, because no one really cares what you do. It depends if you've got something to contribute to the community, and they're interested for a couple of seconds. Oh yeah, playing a show, but have you got a good story to tell? No one really cares. And but I do notice it, particularly with my wife, who works in ballet. She's a choreographer. After being a dancer for so long with the Australian Ballet, and now she's travelling the world, and we talk about a lot about where our creative life fits with just living, but it does fit, because that is our life. We view going for a walk in the morning as a creative act. What is not a creative act is accepting the news cycle, spending a lot of time on social media. I don't find there's much creative about that. There could be. I'd be happy to be proven wrong, because it'd give me an excuse to scroll, to Google myself this afternoon. But we just have made our creative life part of our everyday life. Even in our little town, population 499, going for a cup of tea with a neighbour, you make it fun and creative, and anyone who wants to join in on that they can. I think it's not difficult to be perceived as being one eccentric or an idiot these days, because I mean, even the walk here, you kind of get looked at because you got a bit of a jaunt in your step, but I'm just happy to be alive and out walking, got a bit of sun on my face and not plastered, and it's midday. It's great. And I might even have a sandwich before the show tonight. And I think that's kind of creative, because it's not just sitting and receiving information or tidbits or gossip or vitriol from elsewhere. You're kind of forging your own path, and I think there's something creative in that. And then stepping out on stage, and I got asked last night, you're very calm before you go out on stage. And I said, well, it's just part of the day, really. You just ramp it up a little. Just please don't grab my shoulder as I'm trying to leave the venue, because there's a reason I need to get out of there. A dear friend grabbed me by the elbow last night and I almost clocked him up on Russell Street, and I turned almost with a fist up, and Rogers, you just don't do that. But I was so desperate to get out of there because I could smell drugs in the room, and I just thought, I've got to get out of here. And I made it home, and I had a sandwich and a cup of tea, and I watched my Olivia Colman film, and I was in hog heaven. Rock and bloody roll.
Tim Rogers, thank you very much for joining us on Good Weekend Talks.
Thanks, Konrad.
That was UMI frontman Tim Rogers on the latest Good Weekend Talks. Coming soon, we'll chat with Kos Samaras, the political commentator and pollster, about the Labor Party's changing relationship to working class voters. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate and comment wherever you get your podcasts, and keep tuning in for more compelling conversations. Good Weekend Talks is brought to you by the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, proud newsrooms powered by subscriptions. To support independent journalism, search Subscribe Sydney Morning Herald or The Age. This episode of Good Weekend Talks is produced by Konrad Marshall and edited by Tim Mummery, with technical assistance from our executive producer, Tammy Mills. Tom McKendrick is head of audio, and Greg Callahan is the acting editor of Good Weekend.